Okay guys, hi and welcome to part 3 of what I'm calling the Roland AIRA trilogy. This is a small mini-series of 3 videos that I'm making explaining the linear progression of the Roland AIRA system from its original release to today's date. All the products that came out of that AIRA system development and which are compatible with the AIRA system. Okay. Now in the first video we looked at the original AIRA system. All the components that have been released since its original release, and that video shows you how everything works and how everything can be configured together in different ways, right? Then in the second video we look at the Roland Boutique range. And what Roland did there is they took all the models they developed for the AIRA stuff and they put each of those physical models into a dedicated micro-sized hardware unit. That's the Roland Boutique range, and all of the Boutique products are 100% AIRA system compatible. And here we are in the last video, video 3, and this is the next step of the AIRA trilogy, which is the Roland Cloud. Okay, what Roland did next is they took all of the plug-out emulation plugins from the AIRA system and made them all available on a cloud subscription basis. And then to those AIRA compatible products they added a massive library of all their old ROM and ROM expansion content going all the way back to the JV1080. So it's an enormous collection of plugins and sounds from Roland's history. Okay, and all of the plugins for all the classic stuff, they're all from the AIRA system. They're all AIRA compatible and they all do the plug out stuff with the AIRA hardware. Okay, so that's where we are now. Okay, now just to show you, this is the Roland Cloud Manager software. You install it as a standalone app and you've got a 30-day free trial. As far as I can see so far, after using it for a few days, there are no bursts of white noise on the output of any of the plugins. You get a really good demo period and everything works without interruption. So you can try it out for yourselves. So you install this Roland Cloud Manager, and it has a page for news which draws news from the internet. It has all your instruments here in different categories, and it has this Essentials tab as well. Okay, let's quickly look at this. The Essentials is just 2 things. The Roland Cloud Manager itself, and from here you can update it, and Concerto, which I haven't installed or tried yet, which is a sample playback engine, so I don't know about this one. And then here's all your instruments in different categories. So you start with the AIRA series plugins. You get the System 1 in software form. This is actually available as a standalone plugin you can buy, and we have reviewed it on our channel. If you want to check it out, just search our channel for System 1. It's a really good synth. So you get the System 1 in software plugin form, but you also get the System 8 in plugin form, and this is not available as a plugin to buy standalone. And this is Roland's flagship synth now. So you get the System 1 and System 8 in software form, and both of them are 100% compatible with the hardware units for transferring of patches, MIDI controller for all parameters and all the rest of it. Okay, then you've got your Legendary series, and these are the plug-out plugins from the AIRA range. They're all exactly the same as the AIRA plug-outs. They're 100% AIRA plug-out compatible. So you've got the 4 mono synths, the ProMars, the SH101, the SH2 and the System 100. Then you've got 3 polysynths, the Juno 106, the Jupiter 8 and the JX3P. Now these were never available to buy as standalone plugins, but you get those, right? Additionally, you get the 303, 808 and 909, but also you get a D50 plugin, you get a JV1080 plugin, you even get a Sound Canvas plugin, and then you get these 5 further plugins, each one featuring a collection of SRX expansion sounds from Roland's library. So you've got SRX Dance, Keyboards, Orchestra, Studio and World. And that's all what they call the Legendary stuff. And all of the old school analog mono and polysynth plugins, they're all the plug out compatible plugins that work with the AIRA hardware, the System 8 and System 1. We'll look at that further in a bit. So that's your Legendary stuff. But there's more. There's the Anthology series, which is this plugin. I haven't tried it, I haven't installed it. So you install the content from here, right? This Anthology plugin plays all these different collections of sounds from Roland's library. Then the drum series, well, the 808 and 909 are recategorized in here as well, but there's this additional instrument called Acoustic 1, which is an acoustic drum instrument. Again, I haven't tried this, but there's that. Then you've got this tragically named Flavor series, which is another plugin that plays all these collections of sounds from Roland's ROM libraries. And then finally, you've got this Terra series. It's 2 instruments, sample instruments, a steel guitar and piano, and Roland claimed that these are incredibly realistic and lifelike. So you've got those 2 as well. And on top of that, you've got a big patch library. Okay, so it's a lot of stuff. Now, just to add, when you install the Roland Cloud Manager, you then go and you choose the different plugins and install from here. And if I went to the AIRA series here, for example, System 1, I've already installed it, so it says installed. But if there was an update, this would be orange and it would say update, and I would update from here. So you install this Cloud Manager first, and then you install all the components from here. But there is this option in settings to choose a custom install location, and I did that on my book. But it didn't work. I mean, I installed all the legendary stuff, and if we go to the folder on my hard drive that I set up as the alternative location for content, it's completely empty. So either I've done something wrong, or it doesn't work, or more likely this different content location is for the sample content when you start downloading the instruments that use big collections of samples, something like that. It could be that, I don't know. So that's how it works. You get the software and install everything from here, and you get a month trial, etc. Now, if you want to buy into it, these are the prices. If you want to go monthly, and nobody's going to really do that, it's $19.95 US, 21 euros, or 18.50 pounds, 18 pounds 50 British pounds. Most people will go for the 1 year subscription, which is then 199 US dollars, 210 euros, or 185 British pounds. But they also have a further 2 and 5 year plan, which gives you a lower cost for each year, right? Now, if you take a year subscription, whether it's this one, the 2 or the 5, for every year that you subscribe and complete a subscription, Roland give you 2 of the plugins to keep for life. So even if you unsubscribe and don't do it anymore, you get to keep those plugins. But what I cannot find out, and I searched for 10 minutes all over the internet, 15 minutes, there's nowhere I can find where there's a list of which plugins you're allowed to choose to keep for life. Because, for example, the System 8 is not available as a standalone plugin, and neither are the 3 polysynths. So whether you're allowed to choose one of those, any of those as your freebies to keep, is not made clear, and you'd have to ask Roland about that, because I can't find the information out. But you are supposed to get 2 of the plugins to keep for each year that you subscribe. So that's how it works and how much it costs. Okay, now here's some of the plugins in Logic. So what I did was, I started off, I mean, we all go for the 303 first, don't we? I thought, let's check the 303 out. Okay, there's 303, default pattern and everything. So I've got it on a track running with just Logic's built-in drums, right? Here it is. Etc. It sounds absolutely brilliant. You've got a bunch of patterns, you can build your own, you've got a bunch of preset sounds, all different variations of 303, etc. Really good stuff. Now, just to show you, the 303 has this lower edit area that works really well. You put your notes in here, your slides and your accents. You can do all the last step and all the stuff the real 303 could do. Right? Really good. But just to tell you, the 303, the 909 and the 808 all do pattern drag and drop export as MIDI or audio. We'll look at that in a bit with one of the drum boxes, right? Okay, now all of the plugins have an options button which allows you to zoom. In Logic, at least, you can't zoom by dragging, so you've got the options to zoom here, and even at 200% they all look great. There's no degradation of the graphics, they look fantastic. Is that an aeroplane going over or something? But other things you've got in the options is, well, for the 303, you've got drag and drop as MIDI or drag and drop patterns as audio. Also, for the 303 here, you can set the MIDI control mapping for the hardware TB3 unit. Okay. Other plugins have a similar theme like that for the System 8 and System 1. Okay. All right, that's the 303. Let's put it back to normal size. You can check it out yourself, but the sounds are great. Okay, let's move that out of the way. So I had that going with the drums, you know. And then I thought, okay, I know what all those polysynths and monosynths sound like, so let's try one of these ROM playback plugins. So I installed the SRX Dance. Okay, here it is. Oh, and it's got some great sounds. I am using one of the presets, which is basically the classic Yamaha FM solid bass preset. Everybody knows this classic bass sound from dance music. And 80s pop, etc. You know, pump up the jam and all that, right? So I brought that in there. So I've got a bass line and a lead line in Logic's drums. And a great solid bass there. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So I thought, okay, well, let's not go with Logic drums. Let's bring in the 909. So I brought in the 909. Here's the 909. Yep, there it is. Okay, good stuff again. Good stuff. You've got a bunch of preset patterns. You can make your own. You've got a bunch of preset kits. You can build your own, etc. Different types of, you know, driven and not driven, etc. Again, like with the 303, both the TR drum boxes have this lower edit area. Look, that's the 808, and here it is on the 909. That's the 909, sorry. Here it is on the 808, the lower edit area, which works really well, putting in your accents and your notes and all the rest of it, yeah. You've got your 8 patterns here, and then each pattern has 8 variations, giving you 64 in total, blah, blah, blah. You can do all your last step, all that stuff, right? And I'll just show you the drag and drop now. The 303 does it as well, remember, and the 808. So in the options, where's the options button? It's a bit of a pain because the options button, all the menu buttons are in a different position on each plugin, but here it is, option. So it's we'll set it to drag and drop pattern as MIDI. So what I do is I go to either the main pattern button, let's say A, and drag that, right, boom, and I've dragged a MIDI pattern. I won't import the tempo from the plugin. There's the MIDI pattern, right, you got that. There is a key press for this, but I can't remember it, to switch it to drag and drop as audio when you do the drag, but I'll manually switch it here. And you can drag as audio, but to do that I'm going to need an audio track. Let's just make an audio track here, audio. There's an empty audio track, drag the main pattern button, and there's the pattern as audio, exported. Or I can drag the variation pattern, whatever I like. There's etc. Right? Okay. So you can drag and drop MIDI or audio for the patterns. That's on the TR303, sorry, the TB303, the TR808 and the 909. And they've got this great programming thing, etc. Right? All good stuff. Now further on the TRs in the options, again you've got the zoom and everything. You can initialize MIDI control mapping or clear that. You can optimize both the drum boxes for lower CPU usage. You can also do that for the 3 polysynths, but not for the 303 and not for the other monosynths, right? Also, you can send the pattern or get the pattern to or from the AIRA TR8S. Okay, all right. So that's that. That's the drum boxes and all that. So now we've got 2 drum boxes running with the 303. And that solid bass line. That sounds really good, the 808 and the 909. They all sound fantastic. Okay, then I thought to myself, let's get rid of this audio track. Then I thought to myself, right, well, let's try the Jupiter 8 now. So I brought in the Jupiter 8. Oh, here it is. Come on, Jupiter 8. Now, notice my CPU indicator here for Logic. one thing that everybody who's reviewed these plugins have said is that they are CPU hungry, and they are. We'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. But watch this. So I bring in the Jupiter 8 as my next instrument, and already my Mac is fanning up from these plugins, right? They are pretty greedy. I bring in the Jupiter 8. Now, in its options, it can be optimized for low CPU usage, but we'll turn that off so it's like it is out the box, and it comes out the box with 4 voices. Hit play and watch the CPU. Everything craps out and grinds, you know, it's just noise, crackling. CPU Core 4 is pegged at 100%, and that's it. Everything goes to crap. Now, I've never experienced this with Logic in my life. And sometimes I run projects with 60, 70 or 80 plugins, but I tend to mostly use Logic plugins. But I've never experienced this problem. So I had never looked for a fix for it. But one of the viewers said, oh yes, this is a Logic problem. The way to fix it is this. At the end of your track list, watch the CPU here. Now I've deselected that track for the Jupiter. Already that Core 4 has come down. You go to the end of your track list in Logic, create an audio track, just a blank audio track. Let's turn it off so it's got no input. And because of the way, this is what this viewer said, and it was Philly T, I think, was the guy who said this to me, so thanks for telling me this, but I didn't know it, because I've never had this overload core problem before with Logic. And the way he explained it was that the way Apple have coded Logic is that if you've got an audio track at the end of your stack, or audio tracks, it will prioritize Core 4 for audio. And that removes the ability of Jupiter 8 or any of the other polysynths, because they all do that, to lock up that Core 4. Now we will get high CPU usage, but we won't get that crapping out anymore. And all this plugin is doing, the Jupiter 8, is a 2-note chord over 2 bars, and then it changes to another 2 notes. So this CPU thing will settle down eventually, because it tends to peak when you're first playing stuff, but putting that audio track at the end fixes this problem in Logic. Okay, and once things settle down, adding in this polysynth with what I've got already, the 2 drum boxes, the 303 and the SRX Dance, doing a mono pattern, you get about 40 to 50% CPU loading. Yeah, it is pretty high, but at least it's not crapping out anymore. So these are very greedy plugins, particularly the polysynths. Now, the 2 drum boxes and the polysynths do all have this optimized for low CPU usage, and if we tick that, it does come down a little bit. Okay. That does reduce the CPU load a bit, but not much. So these are greedy plugins, right? Now, additionally, with the polysynths, as well as the zoom, you can switch them between 2 or 8 voices. Now, in the case of the polysynths, also, we get the option to set it up for control mapping for from the System 8 hardware unit. So you just tick that, and the System 8 is assigned to the controls. And then you can switch it to show the System 8 layout. It then switches to show all the controls that the System 8 is assigned to, if you're running it being controlled by the System 8 hardware unit. Let's put it back to normal. Right? Whereas the monosynths have that slightly differently. Where's options? Yeah. For the monosynths, you can set up the MIDI control mapping for System 1 hardware or System 8 hardware, because the smaller monosynths can be automatically mapped from the smaller System 1 or the bigger System 8 hardware unit synths. But the polysynths can only be mapped automatically from the bigger System 8. So with the smaller ones, you can map the System 1 hardware synth or the System 8 hardware synth to the controls. And again, you can switch to the control layout for System 1, showing you what the controls are that the hardware unit is mapped to. Right? So you've got all that. Okay? And you've got the zooming as well. Right? Okay, all good stuff. And just to say, when I encountered that problem, and the guy was telling me, you know, this is a Logic problem. I run Cubase on an old Mac Pro, and it works brilliant. Well, I rushed over to look at what Cubase is doing, because I was always a Cubase user before I switched to Logic, going all the way back to Atari. In fact, I've still got my Ataris and my Pro 24 on my Cubase and everything. But I switched to Logic when VST came out, because the first versions of VST didn't really work. And really, there was very little ASIO hardware as well, apart from those 3 units that came out from that company. I can't remember their name. But initially, there was no ASIO hardware. It didn't work very well, so I switched to Logic at that point. Anyway, so I went rushing over to Cubase's website, Steinberg's website, to have a look. And here's the thing. If you're running Logic, just to tell you, if you didn't know, the new Logic Pro 10 came out just before Christmas, and they're currently doing a cross-grade deal. All you have to do is send a screenshot of your Logic license, and then they'll give you Cubase Pro 10, the full Pro version, for 200 quid off. Almost £200 off. So it goes down from like 480 something pounds to 290 quid. That is a bargain. So I'm probably going to, and you are allowed to continue using your old software. If it's Logic, you can still use your Logic. Whatever you cross-grade from, you're still allowed to continue using it. It's brilliant. So I'm probably going to get Cubase just to tell you, and there'll be some Cubase stuff coming as well. Okay, so there you go. That's all the stuff. I'm not going to show you everything. You can download and install this stuff and try it yourself for 30 days. It sounds incredible, but these are very, very CPU hungry plugins. Now, one last thing to talk about is the plug out stuff, because these 4 monosynth plugins, the 3 polysynth plugins, and the AIRA System 1 and System 8 plugins, they're all compatible with the hardware. So they all have the plug out icon on. These classic units all have the plug out icon to load the engine into the hardware System 8 or System 1. They all work exactly compatible with the AIRA system. You can do all the same stuff, control them from the AIRA hardware units, transfer patches from the hardware to the plugin, from the plugin to the hardware, and load the whole engine into the hardware. It's all the same stuff, right? Yeah, and then the ROM players, they're obviously not part of that. So this is the final part of the lineage of the AIRA system. The cloud system with all of the AIRA plugin content available, plus the addition of a gigantic library of Roland ROM and ROM expansion content going back decades. And I think it is really good value, actually, really good value. Whether they're going to add to this collection with more models, well, we don't know, do we? But there you are. And that's where we are today, and that's the final part of the AIRA trilogy. The 3 different stages of the AIRA product development and the products that came out of that to today's date. I hope that's useful. I haven't really missed anything. Try the stuff yourself. It does sound fantastic. And any comments if you use this stuff or anything else you want to say, let's have a conversation in the comments if you like. Let me know what you think. There it is. I hope that's been useful, and I'll see you for the next video.